students, this is Dr. John, your physics and math professor, coming to you with another parabola quiz or exam style question. Here they're saying how many real roots does this equation have? So here's a quadratic equation, y is equal to minus 30.6x squared plus 30.7x minus 39.8. Now when they're asking for the roots, there's three different things they could ask for, and they're really the same thing. Let's say here you have the y-axis and the x-axis, and here you have a parabola. Well, it intersects the x-axis here and here. Those would be called the roots. In this case, they're also called the real roots. You could also call this the x-intercepts, because notice when it hits the x-axis, or it could be called the solutions to this equation. So when you set y is equal to 0, you're ending up finding these 2 points. Sometimes you're not going to have 2 points. Let's say your parabola has something like this, never hits the x-axis. In this case, you would have 0 solutions. Or in a case like this, it might be that you have a parabola that just touches the axis once. That would have 1 solution. So you have 2 solutions, 1 solution, 0 solutions, or 0, 1, or 2 roots. In this case, they call them real roots. I'll mention what that is in just a second. Let me just erase this. We're going to continue on right here. I've rewritten the problem here. Now, how would you solve this? What we want to do, remember, is we want to find out what this is, what the values of x are when y is equal to 0. So I'm just going to replace that with a 0. The easy way to do a problem often is to factor it. Now, this looks like it's very, very difficult to factor. So in that case, you would jump to the next step, which would be using the quadratic formula. If you remember the quadratic formula, it is when y is equal to 0, and you have it in this form. This is called the standard form. I'll just rewrite the standard form here, where y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. And when y is equal to 0, then you could use the quadratic equation to find out what the values of x are. And what you need to do is find out what the values of a, b, and c are. They're just right here. So a is equal to minus 30.6. That's this value. Include the minus signs. Don't forget those. We often tend to do that. This one is 30.7. And then c is another negative, minus 39.8. Here we have the values of a, b, and c. So I'll write out the quadratic formula over here just in case it slipped our mind. Now it would be x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Looks really complicated. It's one of the few equations that I would suggest you try to memorize. Some of your teachers will give this to you on a sheet during the test. Some may not. So I would suggest you do this one over and over again until you have it memorized. Now, the important thing about this for this specific equation is this thing here that I'm going to outline here. This b squared minus 4ac. From your use of radicals, if you remember, you can't have a negative inside a radical. For example, you can't figure out what this is. Minus 2 square root. We say that's not permitted. You can't have, it's illegal to have a negative inside a square root. Well, what they mention here is they want the real roots. There's actually something in more advanced mathematics where we can have a negative inside a square root, and we call those imaginary numbers, often labeled by the letter I. We're not going to do that right now. Don't worry about it. It's still completely illegal for you to have a negative sign inside a square root. That's why they mention the real roots, just in case you might think, well, could there be imaginary roots? We're not worried about that. Forget that I ever said that. So what we're looking for is we're looking for this thing inside there. This is actually called, it has a special name, it's called the discriminant. Discriminant. The discriminant is the thing, the b squared minus 4ac. It's this thing here, b squared minus 4ac. This is very, very important in all of these problems. If this is negative, then there is no solution, which means that the parabola that we have does not ever touch the x-axis. It's something like this, never touches the x-axis. It has no solution. It has no x-intercepts. So then the answer would be 0 in that case. If this is a 0, if everything inside there is a 0, then the only solution is going to be minus b over 2a, which means that the parabola would touch the axis once, just like that. It would have one contact with the x-axis, one real solution, or just one solution, or one root. The other one is, what if this is positive? If this is positive, you're going to have a value here. Let's say here's our right here, you're going to have this center line here, which is what the minus b squared over 2a, that gives you the center line. And then this portion here over 2a gives you how much those roots are to the right and the left of that. This discriminant helps you to discriminate how many solutions you're going to have. So we want to find that in this case. I'm going to write that out here, erase some of these things that we don't need. And we're going to see if we can find this for this particular problem. So we're going to want b squared minus 4ac. I've written out the a, b, and c here. So let's take a look at that. B would be 30.7, like that. Notice there's a bunch of minus signs. There's a minus sign here, another one here, another one here. So these two minus signs could cancel each other out. We can just erase them so we forget they ever existed. So these two here are now positive times this. So if you notice here, this is 30 point something. This is 30 point something. This is actually a larger number than this one. It's 39.8. So these two things multiplied together are going to be as big as this one or a little bit bigger. What we have here is we have some number here, whatever that is, some number here, maybe it's 1,000 or something. 30 times 30. And then over here we have a similar number, which is about 1,000, but there's 4 of them. So it's going to be about minus 4,000. So this number over here, because there's 4 of these and only 1 of these here, this is like this thing squared. This is going to be way negative. It's going to be like 3 times this as far as negative goes. So minus 3,000 or something like that. And remember, all of this here is inside the radical, like that. So that means the thing inside the radical is negative, which means the discriminant is negative, and that means there are 0 roots. So that's our answer right there. All you needed to do for this problem, you didn't need to solve the whole thing with the quadratic formula. You just needed to do the discriminant. And this could well be a non-calculator problem, because you could look at this and sort of in your head figure out this is going to be negative. I hope that helped. If it did, check out my next video. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.